Okay folks, welcome back. We are into second module of the C++ object model description, module number 35. What we are planning to do in this particular module? We have already looked at what an object model is, and now we are going to talk about the object model layout, what kind of layout an object model would demand. Okay, so we'll start with three options that is available to us. We start with a simple model. Every member is basically a pointer to a typical member. So, it is a very simple model how it is modeled in the memory, but that is not going to solve all the problems that we have. So, what we do is we will go for the next where data and functions are separated. This is a good thing, because data is separate for every object. For example, roll number is there for every student. Okay. So, every individual object demands that data member, but then display marks is common for all students. It should not be stored with every object, is an additional overhead which is not needed. You can keep a single copy of it. That is what we do next time and in our next version, but then this is also not efficient. Then we will see the final version, which is more or less almost all compilers use. Okay. As I said, non-static data members describe the identity of the object, like roll number, name and address of a student object describes that identity of that student, or jersey number name describes identity of that cricketer object, and so on and so forth. So, non-static data members actually defines that object, and that is very important for us to make sure that they store with the object itself. Okay. Non-virtual functions call should be resolved at compile time. Now, that is the other requirement. What I want is that non-virtual function call should be resolved at runtime. My model should be such that it should be done without an overhead. Okay. So, that is my requirement. A single copy of static data members, because that is to be shared. If you remember, static data members are shared between all members of the class, all objects of the class, and that is the reason why we need a data structure. We need an object code where there is a single static data item which is being shared with objects. Okay. Interestingly, we have talked about this before. The function calls are modified to have these pointers, the member function calls. For example, Sachin.getName changed to getName employee Sachin. Now, this is actually passed, and this is, we know that this is this pointer, the invoking object, and we have seen that this transformation takes place. I have talked about this before, but the reason is once a function is converted to it, it becomes a C function. Now, there is a name of a function and there is an argument. It is a very similar to C function. Okay. So, there is no overhead. A member function is converted to a function like C function. So, there is no overhead, no decision to be made at runtime. Now, this is a normal function with this argument, and is also name mangled. If there are two classes with the same function name, this is name mangled to make sure that these two functions remain different and they do not look identical. Okay. So, this is name mangled, it will never remain the same in most cases. So, but anyway, what we have is a single function which is being called. Now, this becomes a C function call. Okay. So, that is one thing. Okay. Here is a typical class structure. Now, pay little attention to it. What we have? We have a default constructor, we have one more constructor, we have a destructor which is virtual, we have a getName function which is a normal function, we have one more virtual function called display details. Okay. We have a number of employees, okay, to be written. Now, this is an employee class, and we have static integer no, which actually we are going to use that thing to find out number of employees, and this is a static function which returns that. Okay. And it has two private data members, employee ID and name. Now, this is a very simple employee kind of a class that you normally see. Okay. So, this first model, simplest model, we have all pointers, every item, and we have a pointer to it. Now, this is a very simple model, as every object that I am defining is going to have a fixed size, no difference, and every one will have a pointer. but then is it efficient? It is not all that efficient, and it is not answering most of the questions that I have asked for. It does not differentiate between virtual function and non-virtual function. It does not even differentiate between a static member and a non-static member. It has to do something. If I do this, in fact, I am unnecessarily storing. For example, if I am storing this with employee Sachin, then employee Lakshman and employee some other, then we will store all that information with it. It is a waste of time and a waste of memory also, because I am storing all those functions in the object which is no longer needed. Okay, so, it is not a very good way of doing it. So, what we do is we define two different blocks. In one case, what we do is we store all information, data members in one block, and then we store all functions in the other one, but then I am using pointers too. So, it reduces my memory. I do not need to demand memory to store all functions, because I will be storing these functions at a separate place. I just store pointers in the object, because those functions are being shared. There is no point storing the functions in every object. This is little better than the previous one, but it still does not differentiate between normal function and the virtual function. It does not even differentiate between a static member and a non-static member. Storing static member with every object does not make much of a sense, okay, because there is again something which is being shared. Okay. So, now looking at both of this, now let us look at what C++ object model offered by most of the compilers that are in use today. Okay. What we have is employee Sachin having only data. Data is stored directly in the object. Now, there is no pointer like the previous case. We are storing it here. There is no indirection. Now, accessing this element, both of these elements is exactly like C function calling, C struct. Okay. I am accessing the elements directly. In the case of this thing, I have one more indirection. I do not have employee Sachin dot employee ID. No, Sachin again will have a pointer which will have to traverse to this place and then get employee ID. This is slower than C. Now, once I have converted it, okay, I have stored this information here is exactly like struct. So, I do not have any overhead. I will be able to access all data members directly. So, that is the first improvement that I will have here. Okay. And for virtual functions, I have a pointer. But what will I do with these functions? Remember, I do not do anything with these functions. I will always convert a member function into a C-like function. My job is done, because every call to these function is called to a C function. Okay. There is no overhead. Okay. So, this thing actually I am storing these functions somewhere, and I am just, whenever there is a call, I will convert that thing using so converting that thing to C-like function. Okay. Okay. Now, what is the job for virtual functions? This pointer. Now, this is an additional pointer that I will have if obviously this employee contain two virtual functions, and that is the reason why the third element is inserted called, and this is VPTR. Otherwise, this will not be there. But whenever there is a virtual function part of a class, every object will contain this pointer, and it will point to a table containing all virtual functions as well as something called type info object, which we have looked at when we studied RTTI. Okay. So, there are two virtual functions, one is a destructor, the other one is display details. For both of them, I have this thing, but remember this is vtable and this is VPTR that we talked about. Okay. And this employee, remember how this is done, this becomes employee, okay, EMP employee. So, I am defining it here. Okay. So, I am passing this calling object here, okay, whatever the calling this thing constructor, same way here. So, I am converting it to C-like function. Okay. Now, let us talk about some cases. For example, if I have a default constructor, some functions that I write in this sum class, but I do not need, when I am a programmer, I do not need a default constructor for this. Okay. I do not need to associate integer ID with anything, it is just fine. Compiler also does not need, because compiler also do not find anything inconsistent here. So, compiler will not define a default constructor. It is not always the case. Suppose if I define, and this is probably something that you have seen if you have ever defined a linked list or written a linked list program yourself. I have an int info and there is a next pointer. Now, this is something I want, but a programmer would always like to make sure that the information is always initialized to 0 and a pointer is always initialized to null, okay. Because if you do that, that node will have less chances of malfunctioning when you insert that thing into a list and you forget to initialize those values. So, it is a great thing to have a default constructor of this type. Information is 0 and PTR is 0. PTR 0 means your is null basically. So, if you are using Xcode, you can write null PTR. I believe that it is also possible to be done with others, but 0 is always better. So, you are initializing. Now, this is something that a programmer requires, but will C++ provide this? C++ will not provide a default constructor. Okay. C++, see, many a times this has been debated, but then let me tell you that, and there are many myths surrounding this part. One myth is that if you do not specify a default constructor, a compiler will provide. Second thing, whenever you provide a default constructor yourself, C++ will not augment it, okay. And C++ will always provide a default constructor. It is not the case. User may or may not define a default constructor. C++ will add or augment a default constructor in 4 distinct cases, and let us talk about all 4 cases. The first case is that when you have a base class with a constructor and a derived class does not offer one. Second case, there is a class which contain other objects, okay. Those objects have their default constructor, but the container object, now this is not a STL container, but a class which containing others, does not have an default constructor, then compiler will define one constructor for it. When a class with virtual function is inherited, remember this is important. Virtual function, obviously you will need to set those VPTR values, and we will see why that is needed, okay. And whenever a class is virtually inherited, okay, virtual inheritance takes place, you will have to provide solution, okay, in 4 cases. So, in 4 cases, if you have not specified a default constructor yourself, a compiler will do it, and even if you have provided, compiler will almost always augment that. And how it is done is the story that we are going to unfold in this case, in this module. Let us take a simple case. Student is inherited into MCA student. A student will have a default constructor of some sort, and MCA student does not have. Now, what does that mean? The designer says that, okay, I am not happy with the default student definition. Normally, when you say student Ganesh, a compiler will do what? Compiler will allocate the amount of memory that you need for Ganesh, and that is all. Compiler will not, the compiler default behavior is this. If a student, if the programmer is not happy with this, programmer will provide his own default constructor. So, that is the point. Now, when you say class MCA student and you do not specify default constructor, you mean that an MCA student, I do not need to do anything with this thing, a compiler will provide a memory for me, I am happy. But then when I define MCA student M, I have a problem, because C++, whenever you define a derived object, actually a derived object is defined in this fashion. So, this is a student object and I have data members of it. I do not store functions here. Remember, we talked about that object model. When I define M, which is an inherited member, it also includes the base class members here. Okay. It is embedded inside, and why it is embedded inside, we will talk about that, but let us first of all discuss what will happen if this is done. When this is done, see what we are discussing about. We have a default constructor here, we do not have a default constructor here. So, there is a default constructor here, user defined, but there is no default constructor for MCA student. What will happen? There is no default constructor for this object, user does not specify. but then because C++ is embedding it, C++ cannot construct this object unless and until this is done, and this C++ compiler cannot do this thing on its own, it will have to follow whatever the user has specified here. So, what C++ will do whenever it defines a derived class object, will also construct this object using the constructor which is specified by the user. What does that mean? That means that will generate an MCA student constructor, will just say that MCA student constructor. Okay, so, it will just construct that the first part of the object is constructed, this part is constructed. Okay. So, that is what is happening here. So, this is a compiler generated this thing default constructor. What if I have already talked about what this physical constructor, when student constructor is defined, that means that the programmer is not happy with compiler's default this thing, he wants it this way. But when you have MCA student, programmer does not know that MCA student contains a copy of student object, because the compiler is doing it that thing on its own. So, it becomes compiler's responsibility to construct that object in consistent manner with the earlier that thing. That is the reason why it will have to synthesize an additional constructor, default constructor. Okay. And well, that is the reason why explicit call to student constructor is required, and that is what is added here. Okay. What if a class already has MCA class, the user has generated a default constructor here. Now, what will compiler do? Compiler cannot generate an additional default constructor now, because you can't have two default constructors, you can only have one. So, what will compiler do? Simple, compiler will augment this with an additional line. So, what does it do? It will first of all construct that additional student sub object and then execute whatever user has specified, simple. Second case is where a class contains some objects. For example, I have a class called face, which has left eye, right eye, okay, nose and mouth, okay, and wherever it is to be positioned. So, we have a point object. You can see that I am using graphics library to draw a face. Now, this is a containing, okay, the face contains these objects, and there is no question of inheritance, this is containment. Now, the problem is that if all circle and triangle and this thing square, all of them have their own constructor, what will happen? And I do not provide, for example, I have not provided face constructor myself, then that is a problem. If I write something like this, okay, I will have to construct Ganesh, and when I am not specified any default constructor as a programmer myself, I do not really care much about anything else. I just want the default this thing to provide. Okay. But then Ganesh contains some objects where I do not want default construction, I want something else, I want the compiler to follow this. That is the reason why compiler will have to generate an additional default constructor for face, where it just constructs all these elements, okay, something like this. So, it will generate this thing. We said left eye is constructed using the circle constructor, right eye is again using circle constructor, nose again using rectangle, triangle and so on. Okay. In fact, if not only default, other constructors may also be needed sometimes, because if you provide a position of the face, these things are to be positioned at those places. Okay. So, that thing might also be needed, but anyway, you can see that the default construction, whenever a default constructor is provided, the compiler will have to change. Okay. So, if a face, for example, sorry, I have not talked about that. If face already has some constructor, suppose if I have defined face, and I have done something, maybe see out something, then now compiler cannot construct a new one, I will have to add whatever that we have done. Okay. Left I dot circle circle, call the default circle constructor and so on and so forth. Okay. So, we will have to do that, it will augment the user defined constructor. Okay. Now, a little more complex case, a class with virtual function is inherited. I have virtual function called getMarks. Remember, this is something that we have already seen earlier, and we have an MCA student called Ganesh. Okay. Now, try to understand, there is a default this thing, there is do I need a default constructor? In fact, I have not specified default constructor in either of these cases, and I just said MCA student is Ganesh, but then class student has a virtual function. Now, that makes it complex. Okay. What is the complexity? Remember, whenever I define a virtual function, I need to have a virtual table constructed, virtual pointer will have to be there with every object, and that should point to that virtual table. But then when this is inherited, remember I virtual getMarks will have to be, this MCA student should also be having a virtual function, will also have a virtual table of its own. Okay. So, that is the problem. It will have now, in fact, class MCA student will have two virtual VPTRs, one which its class this object. Okay. There is, you know, that there is an object called student, sub object student, and the remaining elements of MCA student. Okay. So, when this is embedded, a student will have his own VPTR and this will have his own VPTR. Now, that complicates the matter, and we will see how that is managed. Okay. So, what I need to do, virtual table for MCA student class must be generated. Okay. I have to do it. Okay. I will have to generate for MCA class. Okay. Something. Okay. This VPTR should point to that virtual table. It is quite possible that student only will have virtual getMarks, but here there are 5 more virtual functions. So, this pointer should point to all 6 together here. getMarks obviously will have to be defined here. Additionally, it will define 5 more virtual functions. So, this VPTR should point there. The student VPTR should point to a place where this is only one getMarks and nothing else, pointer to getMarks, and this is type info. Okay. So, these two are different virtual pointers. Okay. So, virtual pointer for MCA student class, and is normally named as vtable MCA student. Okay. So, this is vtable MCA student, this is vtable student. Okay. Must have an entry for the getMarks function, will have to have. Why? Because it is virtual. So, student also will have an entry, MCA student will also have an entry. Okay. So, getMarks will be there, even if the others are not there, getMarks will have to be there. Okay. If there are other virtual functions, as I said, will be added next to the getMarks. For every object like Ganesh which is defined, there is a VPTR. Okay. And this is normally referred as underscore underscore VPTR underscore underscore. Okay. It has to be made to point to the vtable MCA student. Point is, when I say that student MCA student Ganesh, what exactly happen is that will have an additional VPTR and underscore 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 underscore. I am not specifying actually, but normally it is so. So, Ganesh dot VPTR, now this is a pointer, Ganesh dot VPTR, VPTR star is what? The V table. Okay. Is what? Is just we say that is an address of vtable MCA student, because we say that when we say that MCA student Ganesh, the default constructor of Ganesh might do other things, but additionally it will say that Ganesh dot VPTR should point to the V table. Okay. So, basically is a pointer. So, we will say that star of it is basically an address of this V table that is newly generated. Okay. So, for every object there are two things, we have an additional member and then that member is pointing to this place, and if this is a polymorphic object, okay, whenever it points to some other class, this value, now this VPTR will mate to point to some other, and that we will also see. Okay. So, this is an additional important statement added at in default as well as other cases. And this pointer are managed at runtime. Okay. Changing the call to the virtual function. Okay. Let us try to see how it is done. Quite interesting. Student, now I have this thing, temp student is a pointer to student, and now I say that temp student get marks. Now, how it is converted? Now, get marks is a virtual function. So, what I have to do? I have to say that temp marks, I do not know what is where it is pointing to. So, I would say that wherever it is pointing to, I will take VPTR of it. So, it will VPTR is pointing to, if it is student, it will point to student, is MCA student, it will point to MCA student. So, that pointer keeps on changing. So, this VPTR will tell me where it is. Now, when I say that star, what does it do? It will get me the address of the V table. Okay. If it is an MCA student, it will be the address of the V table of that MCA. Okay. Now, in that V table, the get marks, for example, has entry 1. Okay. So, this is, assume that this is my V table, the first entry, okay, 0th entry is always type info, and I have only one. So, normally it is the first entry. So, get marks is stored here, the first entry. So, star this thing is basically this table. Now, what will I do? Okay, pointer to this table. So, I will say that pointer, oh sorry, this, okay. So, this is the value, this is the V table, and I will just say that 1, the entry number 1, array 1. Okay. And what is the argument? Argument is invoking object, this is this pointer. Okay. So, this VPTR 1, why 1? Because get marks is the first entry, if get marks is the 5th entry, it will be 5. And remember that if it is 5 for one class, it will have to be 5 for all classes, because this statement will have to work wherever temp student is pointing to. So, there has to be some consistency in the design of the virtual table, and that is not very difficult. For example, this get marks is the first entry in student, will always be the first entry in MCA student as well. Okay. Whatever virtual students, virtual functions defined by MCA student will always come later. Okay. So, that is not the problem. So, if it is the first entry here in student, will have to be first entry in MCA student, will have to be first entry in some other class which is derived from it. So, this statement is going to work with all classes. We will just say, remember temp student VPTR, this V tables first entry, and whatever that function is with this value. Okay. What we have done is we have busted two myths. First is, whenever user does not provide a default constructor, a compiler provides one. No, only 4 cases that we talked about. Compiler generated default constructor provides everything user wants. No, user's requirement user will have to specify. Compiler only will do something which suits or requires for itself. Okay. The other point is virtual inheritance like this. You have a class B, you have a class D1 which is derived from it, and class D2 which is also derived from B, and now class DD which is publicly derived from this too. Okay. And because these two are virtual inheritance, you know, you have a single copy. Okay. This is a normal inheritance where there are 2 copies of B, and in case of virtual inheritance there is a single copy of B. Now, this changes a lot of things, like here it is B and D1, B and D2. Now, here is B and D1 and B and D2. So, this D2 object actually is divided into 2 parts, one is here, other part is here. In case of previous, if you are just manipulating D2 object, you just go through and process it. Now, they are displaced by this distance. Okay. So, the code is not going to work the same. Okay. So, we have something, for example, I am calling initialize new D1 and new DD. New D1, okay, there is something called D1 int, okay, which is part of it. Okay. So, there is some part of it, here is d int which is part of it. Now, here there is one more d int, in fact, there are two b ints, there are two members, okay, b int 1 and b int, and I can differentiate by d 1 b, okay, b int, d 2 b int. Okay. So, I can specify both of them. When it becomes single, in a case of virtual inheritance, I only have one. So, that is the problem. Okay. So, how will I manage this? Initializing, basically I want this. I want to initialize b int with value 100. Now, there is, okay, this actually is very complex. I am not talking about how this is implemented, but usually the solution is this. The solution is that I just say that PD1 points to something called virtual base table, okay, which tells me exactly where b int is, and then I assign it. Okay. So, if it is virtually inherited, the base class is displaced. Okay. So, the normal calculations will not work. So, we will have to look at this virtual base class table and do it. How this virtual base class table is constructed and how it is done is actually compiler dependent. There are few ways in which this can be done, and all of them are pretty complex. If you want to learn more about that, I would suggest you to read this thing, the book from Stanley Lipman, okay, inside the C++ object model, one of the best. Okay. With that note, we conclude this module, friends. What we have seen in this module, we looked at how object model is laid out. We looked at three different ways in which it is possible to do it, and we have seen that the third way is comparatively better than the earlier two, and we have seen the consequences of that model, and we have seen how default constructors and few other things demand compiler to generate a default constructor or augment default constructor on its own. And we have also seen that how virtual base class also demands some management to the code itself, some modification to the code itself. With that note, we will conclude this module. Thank you all, friends. Thank you all, friends. Thank you all, friends. Thank you all, friends. Thank you all, friends.